Hi, everyone. Today I'm excited to chat with David Villalva. He's a lucid storyteller who has created many visuals and published articles and guest posts that illustrate the building blocks of a well-designed story. He really does a great job on his blog to help writers confidently get to the end of their story, to just be confident in that. And he also is working on his first class, and he is finishing his first fiction novel. And he's just so inspiring. Definitely a leading learner who is, gonna rock the world of storytelling. I can just see that. So,
Thank you.
yes. So, and he shares his resources and great blog posts on his author website, davidvillalva.com. So, hi, David. Thanks for being here today.
Hi, what's up? Thank you for having me. I appreciate the very kind words.
Oh yes, well that's actually what I saw your website, and you give such great resources out for free for people that are wanting to tell stories. Like your infographics are just so detailed and just super easy to understand, and the one that really, I mean, they all help me, but the one that really sticks out is the antagonist one. I hadn't. It's like you have a new twist of, like, a new way of looking at things, and so I just really appreciate the time, because I know it takes time to put together those resources.
Yeah, of course, it's not a problem. I do it for a reason to try and help people, and
Yes,
I'm just like you said, just trying to share what I learned along the process of finishing my debut novel.
yeah, and it's just really great. I just think so. Whoever's listening, just go check out David's website, davidvillalva.com, and you'll just see all kinds of amazing resources there to help you. But if you're okay with that, David, we can just get started, and just I just got a few questions. If
Yeah, I think you shined me properly. We can get going.
Okay, all right. So would you just share your story of how you were inspired to write and to blog on your about storytelling and all of that? Where did your inspiration come?
They're pretty closely connected. I've always loved writing, like a lot of people, I'm sure, listening. I just didn't always know exactly where to focus that love. So growing up, I'd actually enjoy writing reports. It was probably the only class I liked, English. And I recorded a lot of my thoughts in journals. I recorded my dreams for years. I wrote a lot of bad poetry, wrote a few short stories, and I took some journalism classes just all this time, my entire life leading up to the age of 30, just trying to find out exactly where I wanted to focus all that writing. Even did some marketing stuff. But it wasn't until 8 years ago, I'm 38 now, when I was 30, that I realized I wanted to write novels. I was
Yeah.
standing in the bathroom, and that's when the epiphany struck. I was looking in the mirror, washing my hands, and I heard this voice, just this tiny voice that had said, "You're going to write novels." And I've been doing it the last 8 years, just trying to finish one that I feel is worthy to share with the world. And then right about a couple years ago, a year and a half ago, is when I was listening to some of the pro writers out there, and they were saying, "Hey, you know what? It's really smart to build a platform so people actually know you exist when you actually come out with these stories that you're writing. Otherwise, you publish it, and there's a lot of crickets." So I kind of went back to the drawing board and talked to a lot of friends, kind of found out what they thought my strengths were. I looked at my skill set and kind of where I thought I was pretty good, and just also looked at the passion that I had as far as novel writing went, and I kind of just fused it all together and launched my blog about a year and a half ago, and thankfully it's gone really well.
I think, wow, what a neat story. I guess a person gets inspired by many different things, but that's really neat that you know I usually have my moments in the shower, but I guess so we're
So
all
you hear
getting.
voices too? Your voices too?
So maybe
Is that?
is that common in fiction writers? I don't know.
I think it's common for writers.
Yeah,
I For years I had heard another voice saying just write, and I
yeah,
thought it wanted me to go and just write more bad poetry. And so I was like, I'm not inspired by poetry anymore or anything like that. And it wasn't until I heard that very clear voice
yeah,
saying go write novels. But I think a lot of people experience that, whether
yeah,
it's an audible one or just something inside their soul telling them to just go put something on the page.
yeah. It really helps with direction and right, and next steps. So you mentioned that you got your website started a year and a half ago, and on your website you call yourself the Lucid Storyteller. So
Yes.
would you just kind of talk about that, describe what you mean by that?
Yeah, it's obviously a self-proclaimed title. I kind of joke about that at the blog. I used to really be into lucid dreaming, and I wanted to try and incorporate some of that. And if people don't know what lucid dreaming is, it's where you're inside a dream and you realize you're actually dreaming. And if you can stay in that dream and not wake up, you can actually just kind of do whatever you want in that world. And so I look at this when it comes to storytelling, as far as lucid storytelling, being aware of kind of all the components and all the pieces and the proven framework that's living inside fiction, best-selling novels and stuff like that, understanding how they connect. I feel like I can clearly, after studying the craft, practicing the craft, applying story structure that lives inside novels, I feel like I can clearly see what it takes to write and finish a story that connects with readers. And that's basically what I mean by being a lucid storyteller. Your eyes are wide open to what's giving life to the pages that are entertaining readers.
Yeah, that's excellent. Wow. And that's, I was just listening. It was something Dean Wesley Smith had been, a video of his. And, that seems to be a common thing with, especially fiction writers and readers, is that they want entertainment. And often they're looking for an escape, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
That's exactly right.
Yeah.
Exactly right.
Yeah. So, you are definitely a leading learner in the storytelling niche, and I love the resources you share for fiction writers on your website. So would you just talk about the different parts of story structure, maybe similar to how you do your free plot structure download, and just give an example that maybe listeners would recognize?
Yeah, I can. I'll be straight up and say I did not create this, of course. I mean, Joseph Campbell's Hero's Journey, obviously talked about that. And then Sid Field, he had a big book on screenwriting about that. It was called Screenplay. There's obviously Larry Brooks at Storyfix, James Scott Bell. A lot of guys out there are really trying to teach this. I just want to try and teach it in a more visual way. And that's what I can run through really quickly. The Hunger Games is obviously a very popular novel written by Suzanne Collins. And it takes just a couple of minutes, but I can run through the core components if that's what you're looking for.
Sure. Yeah, that would be great if you would.
Okay, so the way I break it down in my head is that there's 4 parts to a novel, fiction. Even this can also apply to screenplays. And they're each basically 25%. And the first quarter of a novel would be like the setup. And all you do in that first portion is really establish the setting, the stakes, the characters. And that's leading up until about the first 25%. The second 25% is more where the protagonist is reacting. He's more, or she is more cautionary. And there's a lot of uncertainty in this story world and how the protagonist is perceiving it. And then the third 25% would be something that I like to call proactivity. It's where the protagonist has actually gone into a different role from being reactive to proactive and attacking this overarching story goal that he or she wants to accomplish by the end. And that is the last 25%, where you're just going to resolve everything you've set up the previous 75%. And that's where you're going to have your climax. And that's where the protagonist is going to tie up all the loose ends and other subplots and their side characters and stuff like that. Are also, those issues are going to get resolved. But inside those 4 components, there's actually 7 other key plot milestones. And it's the hook, it's the first plot point, it's the first pinch, it's the midpoint, the second pinch, the second plot point, and the climax. And your listeners are probably listening right now saying, okay, I think I've heard of some of those, but what do they all mean? I mean, in the beginning, the hook's a no-brainer, right? You got to capture somebody's attention. And in the Hunger Games, when the way Suzanne Collins caught the reader's attention is her just waking up in a cold bed on the day of the reaping. And by the end of the first chapter, which is just several pages long, she's her sister, Primrose, her name is actually called out, right, to go and participate in the Hunger Games. And then later in the novel, closer to the 25% marker, in the Hunger Games, it's closer to the 20% marker, is where the first plot point happens. And that's actually a story goal launch. And it's where the protagonist's overarching story goal is set into motion. And it's unmistakable. They know exactly what they're in for at this point as far as what Katniss is going to try and get accomplished. And what she realizes in the Hunger Games is that she wants to try and win the games. At first she's like, oh my goodness, am I going to be able to survive this? Oh, I'm just going to die. But then it's at that point she says, you know what, I'm going to go win this thing and do whatever it takes and play the game. And then next there's something called the first pinch point, which happens at about a 37-38% marker. And I know I'm getting really specific with these percentages, but they're proven and they're happening over and over in these stories. And I have lots of examples in the free download that you had talked about earlier. But this is where the core antagonist comes face to face with the protagonist. And in the Hunger Games, it's going to be where Katniss enters the cornucopia and faces the other 23 tributes that she's going to have to try and kill to actually survive the 74th Hunger Games. And then right in the middle of a novel is called the midpoint. I call it also the illumination, to where the protagonist, there's some type of twist or something like that, that empowers the protagonist to basically switch from that reactive mode that I've been talking about to a proactive mode and really start chasing that core overarching story goal. And again, in Hunger Games, it's where Rue actually reveals herself and is an ally to Katniss, and basically turns and flips the tables on a bunch of the other tributes that are waiting at the bottom of a tree to try and kill her. And that's like her first time she's really made an aggressive attack at the other tributes in the Hunger Games. And then there's only just a couple more, so don't worry, I'm almost through here in case the listeners are like, what is he talking about? Oh my goodness, this is kind of complicated. But at the 62% marker, there's something called the second pinch point. It's the second time in the novel where you're going to have a mini showdown between the protagonist and the core antagonist. And in the Hunger Games, it's where Katniss faces the death and pain of the games, because this is where Rue dies, and she actually sees what's at stake. It's like kind of like the stakes are raised. This one ally she had, or she believes that she has in the Hunger Games, is actually killed by another tribute. And then what she does is turns around and kills that tribute, which represents her first official kill in the Hunger Games. And it really just kind of amps the level of the intensity, showing that she's going to do whatever it takes. She's actually going to kill purposefully if necessary to win the games. And then there is, at the 75% marker, the second plot point, which is like a story goal enlightenment, to where the protagonist is going to a revelation is shown to the protagonist. It's like a final missing piece that's going to allow them to go into this last 24% or last 25% of the story to resolve the entire overarching story goal that she has, which again, in this case, Katniss's case, is to survive and win the Hunger Games. So in the Hunger Games, Peeta needs medication because Claudius had actually told and announced to all of the other tributes that were still alive that whatever's needed most is going to be waiting at the cornucopia. And obviously Katniss wants to save Peeta's life, and she goes ahead and goes in there, and then that's where she's going to have to face everybody. But right at the end, I just want to point out, there's one last one. It's called the climax. A lot of people think this comes like right at the end of your novel, but the climax typically happens at about the 90-91% marker, and that's where the protagonist and antagonist have one final epic like showdown, confrontation, and somebody comes out the winner. And in the case of the Hunger Games, it's Katniss and Peeta. They face off against Cato, some wolf-like mutants, if everybody can remember that, and then also the Capitol itself, because they they turn the tables again and say only one person can win, which requires Katniss to be smarter than ever. That is a really quick, condensed version of how story flows and just how the protagonist moves along a plot line. And again, in the visual that I provide, it breaks down these details very specifically.
And I'm sure a lot of people listening find it super helpful to, like when you share a popular story along with, the different.
Basically proving the structure, right? The framework. I say it's there, and a lot of people say it's there. I mean, Joseph Campbell, James Scott Bell. It's just a matter of showing a really popular best-selling example like you were talking about, so people can see and compare each of the plot points.
Yeah. A lot of it sort of, I don't know if we kind of soak it in as we're reading.
You do. I think a lot of writers instinctively absorb all of this. Because like when I actually learned it, I'd already trunked a couple novels, or when I discovered this plot structure, and I went back and looked at the drafts that I had trunked to never touch again, that I touched in this unique situation. I saw that several of the plot points in my story actually lined up. So a lot of people, just through watching movies and just reading novels, they instinctively pick up a lot of these things. They just don't know they're there, and that's why I kind of say I became lucid in that moment when I understood that. And I can tell you a lot of people have. A lot of people that have felt the same way.
Yeah. Well, and that's really what makes the stories just amazing, right? Because
Yeah.
and as readers, we start to expect that, right? That's sort of
Oh, totally.
what draws us, right?
Oh, you're exactly right. So, I mean, people in general have been encouraged to receive stories in a certain way.
Yeah,
I mean, I'll even watch like a 2020 murder mystery now, like on TV, and see these specific plot points being used in a nonfiction story, but for entertainment purposes, they use these plot points in this progressive architecture when sharing it like on a television show. And it's just, this is, again, we know James Scott Bell,
yeah,
Joseph Campbell, all these people have
yeah,
studied this, and they just picked it up and said, oh, wow, I mean, it's a formula. A lot of people don't like that word, but it's a formula that works because readers and moviegoers very much expect it, want it, and at this point they deserve it because that's what they're asking for.
yeah. Just sort of a little twist, still talking about story, but let's focus just a little more on. Would you just talk about thoughts on how to create characters that attract and entertain readers?
Yeah, I definitely can. That's not a problem. It's a good question. So the quickest tip or just thought that comes to mind is just to have writers, um, assuming because we're talking to primarily writers here, storytellers go ahead and write backgrounds for their characters.
Yeah,
I actually recommend writing pages and pages, getting to know your characters. I didn't used to do this before, but once I started doing it, because one of my pro coaches, it was actually Kristen Lamb, at warriorwriters.wordpress.com.
okay, yeah,
Do you know her?
yeah,
Yeah, so
yeah,
she's one of my mentors. So she was the one that had said do this. I'd heard it before, but she's like,
yeah,
hey, give this a shot. And what I found out is that instead of getting to know my characters while I'm writing the story itself
yeah,
or in a first draft, I got to know them beforehand, and it's kind of like going on a bunch of dates and like and possibly like getting close to married or married before you're actually celebrating your first anniversary with the character. So it just helps you really get inside their head and understand a lot of their backstory. You don't always have to share a lot of that backstory or any of it really with your reader, but it's going to equip you with a lot more ammunition so you can get inside their heads. And then once you've kind of gone deeper, I'd say go deeper again to kind of just find out some of the darker stuff. And when you've gone darker, go darker again. I always say if you're just try and go that extra bit to get even more inside somebody's head, because that's where you're really going to find a few gems that are going to help you kind of throw into a plot twist or just blow your reader's mind in a fun way.
As you were talking about digging deeper, that's often when I have looked at. I don't know if you've been to writershelpingwriters.net with that. So they often talk about character wounds and false beliefs, and that's what I do too. I just do handwritten when I'm like that's my process. When I'm writing about my characters, like my main
Yeah,
characters and stuff. I
yeah,
don't
just
know.
freestyle.
Yeah, because sometimes I find that I don't know. Oddly enough, it helps more of the creative juices seem to flow. But that's when I often come across stuff like what lies are they believing? What happened in their background where they have these wounds and they put up walls. That the walls they have to go through this. Well, sort of a transformation, right?
Yeah, no, you're right.
Isn't
You're
that kind of
exactly
the
right.
goal by the end of the story?
That is what it is.
Yeah,
Yeah, well, yeah. You need, I mean, all characters, but especially
yeah,
the protagonist and even the antagonist need to transform. They start one way in the beginning and they transform. They become something else by the end. And a lot of that is external, but what a lot of storytellers sometimes miss is the internal part. You need to have two
yeah,
overarching story goals, even if your protagonist isn't even aware of it.
yeah,
That needs to be in place, that they started here and they're going to grow to this point or evolve to this point.
yeah.
But I call them dark truths,
Okay,
and
yeah.
it's a good thing to try and have those revealed to the reader at some point along the story as well.
As a reader, that's the parts that I love. I like these. It feels like what it feels like to me is that I'm getting to know all these secrets. Oh wow! So now what's going to happen? Because this is a really deep one. This is what I'm thinking as
Yeah,
a reader,
yeah.
right?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, that's kind of the fun part of
It's
stories.
really fun. And that's, you're talking about the fun part. Like, for a little bit there, I will tell people, like, I think it's really important to know this proven framework, but it's really important to keep having fun because sometimes when you see some of this, or a lot of people think when they learn some of this framework or all of it, that they won't be able to have fun anymore. There won't be surprises anymore, or that I or you are going to like know exactly what's going to happen in a movie. Like, okay, I had a buddy say this to me recently. Oh, why do you want to go see that movie? You know what's going to happen. I'm like, I don't know what's going to happen in the movie. I just know that something is going to happen, and I know the type of something, but it's still very surprising, and it's still really entertaining.
Yeah.
Doesn't spoil the fun. That's the point.
Yeah. So, since we're talking sort of along the lines of character and protagonist, what would be your tips on developing a compelling, protagonist that readers would just want to dig deeper?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
There's a lot of variables involved,
Yeah.
but I always recommend just start with your. This sounds bizarre. You're asking me, hey, how do I create a compelling protagonist? I say develop a compelling antagonist.
Yeah.
To me, it's straightforward. Actually, I recently published something at the website. It was called An Open Letter from Your Antagonist, and it was just. It said it better than what I'm probably trying to say right now, but the short of it is that the antagonist empowers your protagonist to shine inside the story, because as a storyteller, I think a lot of storytellers give their protagonist too much credit, and it's really fun to create your protagonist. Sometimes you come up with that person first. It needs to be fun, but when I say maybe we give the protagonist too much credit, authors just need to recognize that antagonists, they're what gives these protagonists the primary conflict that drives them throughout an overarching plot line. At every major event, at some point, that antagonist has his or her finger on that event that's happening with the protagonist. And once you kind of see how the two fit together throughout the entire story, it's not all about like, okay, what's my protagonist going to do next? It's more like in the back of your head, it's like, okay, the antagonist is going to try and do this to mess up the protagonist so that the protagonist has to do this next. So, I mean, that's the short of it. Just start with your antagonist and create an awesome, awesome character there.
Are there are there certain questions you would ask your antagonist to know, what the antagonist is going to, do to stop the protagonist, and in that way, create a better story? Like, are there questions to ask, do you think?
There are questions. I don't know if I can come up with them right now or if any are coming to mind.
Yeah.
It's more the way that I approach it is looking at some of my favorite stories and characters and looking at the way they've interacted in my genres that I love, whether it's one that I write or just watch movies about, and looking at the way that they interact. Because from that you can get a lot of really good ideas to find out how they did it. And then you can try and come up with your own unique twist on how to innovate that situation. So I know that you and I had previously kind of talked about the antagonist or the creative villain infographic that I put together, but that's exactly how I created that thing. I looked at the way that some really popular protagonists interacted with their antagonists and tried to figure out how the two help each other grow. And one's becoming more wicked, and then the other one's becoming just more mature and stronger. And then at the end, you got two really strong characters coming together. But that would be my first thing. Look at maybe your favorite novel, or favorite movie, or maybe your favorite villain and hero combination, and just look at the different ways that they interact. Specifically in the first plot point, which is in the story structure guide, the plot structure guide that I provide, and then the two pinch points along with the final climax, because those four interactions are going to be the primary times where your antagonist is really trying to mess up your protagonist.
Yeah.
So I hope that helped answer in a way. I'm pointing to, hey, go look at your stories. But there are different nuances with the different genres. And it's really important that you look at yours and what you love most and trying to put your unique spin on it.
Yeah, that's really good. I was just thinking as you were talking about, because this is the example kind of we've been going with, is the Hunger Games, and the Capitol would definitely be an antagonist, even though it's a big, it's not just necessarily one person. Well, I guess it is President Snow, but
there's President Snow. There's the Capitol. I mean, there's specific tributes, and probably in the story itself, the one tribute, Cato, would probably be the core antagonist. Because he's like the one that's leading the other tributes to try and get Katniss and bring her down. I mean, a question towards the end of the story, like at the climax of the Hunger Games, could, I don't know, Suzanne Collins might have asked herself, okay, so Katniss just put down the wolf-like mutants, Cato's dead, and now PETA and Katniss are there, and they're alive. And last time Katniss knew, the Capitol had said, and President Snow had said, okay, the two of you get to live, because two people are going to win the Hunger Games at that point. What she might have asked herself is like, what can I do to throw another quick twist on this? What can I do to make this antagonist even more wicked? And what she might have done is said, hey, you know what? I'm going to have the Capitol, which happened in the story of the Hunger Games, Capitol announced to the two of them sitting there alone that I'm changing the rules again. Guess what? There can only be one winner of the Hunger Games. Basically, I'm reneging on exactly what I said just a couple hours ago. So they were in bliss 1 second, and now they're just completely twisted again. And then that's, of course, where they take the berries, and they are willing to roll the dice and actually eat the berries to try and stand up to the Capitol. And that was a really cool, unique, innovative way for a climax. I mean, just each moment she's raising the game. So that's kind of one of the things you can do throughout your story is like, hey, what can my antagonist do to my protagonist that's just going to be even more wicked or just even more twisted to try and make him do something or her do something else.
Yeah. But do you go after, like, sort of, what's my question? Do you have the antagonist go after sort of the weak points of the protagonist? Is that kind of what they do?
It's a lot of things. Yeah, and that's definitely one of them. I mean, one of the best ways is what you were talking about earlier, trying to find out, not obvious weaknesses, but like the dark truths. Like you were talking about these lies that are living inside the protagonist.
Yeah.
Trying to get a way for the antagonist to expose those dark lies or those dark truths and lies that maybe the protagonist isn't even aware of him or herself, or maybe the reader isn't aware of, and having the antagonist bring out some of those things to not only throw it in the face of the protagonist subconsciously, but also just to, on the exterior, just make them, like, throw them in a deeper pit. Okay, and now throw them in some lava, whatever it might be. But yes, I think that what you're basically asking is it a good idea to try and have them bring out some of that stuff? And I'd say yes.
Yeah.
Every time.
Yeah.
Yes. But you have to know those, right? So that's kind of going back to that other step.
Yeah.
Which is a lot easier if you wrote character backgrounds. It can definitely be done. People do it without writing all that stuff. People write a first. Dean Koontz, he does not do any backstory whatsoever. He writes, and I'm a huge fan of his. I was kind of disappointed to find out he has an outline, but I mean, he's brilliant. He can do it. He can write a page, and it's like his first draft is basically his last draft outside of his wife and his publisher reading it without just kind of going back and fixing a couple things that maybe didn't match up perfectly. But the guy read like 30 novels in 30 days. I mean, he knows story.
Yeah.
He might not be able to break down plot structure like I did, but he knows it instinctively through and through, no question whatsoever. It's just like walking to him.
Yeah. Wow, that's awesome.
It's cool. Yeah, I'm a little jealous.
I'll story
get there.
inside.
We'll get there.
That's great. Is there a way to come up with, like, okay, sorry, this isn't one of the questions either, but now you've got me on.
Let's go. I know, this is freestyle, this is free writing verbally.
Exactly. Because, it's important to have high stakes in a novel, like something that's just, seems impossible or whatever, that the, protagonist has to, and maybe it's the antagonist that creates the high stakes, right? Because the protagonist needs to get to their ending, right? Mm-hmm. To their good ending. Well, not in all books, but
yeah, well, but that's what we're all shooting for. Even that writer didn't do it.
Yeah. So what would be sort of your tips for a writer to come up with some high stakes? Is this based on the main character's background, or is it based on the antagonist and his evil plot to or is it like a combination of everything? Like, how do you come up with the high stakes in your story?
That is very much a loaded question, but let's try and look at it. So I actually came up with a formula when it came to just trying to come up with your stakes, period. And off the top of my head, I'm trying to open it up really quickly just so I can break it down and try and help out as many writers as possible.
Sorry, David, I put you on the spot.
No, you're good. And you know what? It's fun, and who knows, maybe we'll have to take this out, but you know what? It's fun. Like, I like this kind of stuff, but it's been quite some time since I wrote about it, even in my own draft to where I wrote about it. And that's why I wanted to go ahead and just try and find it right here, because it's fun. And it's all about, here we go. So just simply put, stakes are the reason that your protagonist has a story goal, right? We've been talking about story goal. They need to try and find something throughout the overarching plot line. And that can be like life or death, freedom or imprisonment, love or loneliness. It's either, the stakes are either you're going to get this or this. It's either going to be exactly what they want or serious repercussions. And obviously readers want very clear stakes in their story itself. But the stakes formula that I had come up with is basically if, fill in the blank, if protagonist does not achieve blank story goal, then this negative outcome will occur. I mean, so like when you're just trying to even think about stakes, that's like number one. If protagonist, fill in the blanks, does not achieve story goal, negative outcome will occur. Okay. And I can give you a few examples. For instance, like the Maze Runner, it's like if Thomas does not escape the maze, everyone trapped inside will die. And when it comes to Gone Girl, if Nick Dunn does not prove his innocence, Amy Dunn will remain free while Nick goes to prison. And The Lord of the Rings is the last one I'll give as an example, but it's even simpler, or more simple, whatever the grammatical correct version of that is. It's if Frodo Baggins does not destroy the ring, Sauron will use its power to enslave Middle-earth. So I would say if we're going to even, before we get into the really crazy nuances of stakes, just start with that and make sure you really understand what your protagonist wants and what's going to happen if they don't get it and who's standing in its way. Yeah. I hope that helps.
That really does help. Yeah. And you know, in many cases it is like the main character feels that their life is going to end. It's that kind of high stake. And sometimes it is physical, but sometimes it's like where they've lost their dreams, you know, or something, right? So it needs to be really compelling like that, right?
Yeah. You're exactly right.
Yeah. Okay. So thanks for clarifying that, because it definitely helps me in my own writing, and I'm sure it helps people that are listening too. So
definitely.
Yeah. So you know, as you've been been writing and being a storyteller, what would you say is the best piece of advice that you've been given, on your own storytelling journey?
There's a lot. It's a good question. I have not been asked that before, which is kind of surprising. Best advice. I'll start. You know what? I'm a huge fan of Seth Godin. And I'm just trying to think how to put this. It's kind of a layered deal. But it's basically, he said, and I remember hearing it in a podcast, actually. It might have been on maybe Jeff Goins, for all I know. But he said that you have to dance with the fear. And for some reason that resonated with me. And believe it or not, I was listening to that podcast in the shower. Because I think it can apply to just two different areas of storytelling. Because writing itself can be a really scary thing. I mean, just putting your words on there, just even with it in the back of your mind that somebody is someday going to read that, can be terrifying. I mean, it is for me. I still dance with the fear. I'm really jealous of writers that just completely get over it. I've learned how to write a lot of words in a short amount of time and get my thoughts onto the page. And I put in the work at the keyboard, but it's still pretty scary at times. The other second layer is when it comes to just dancing with the fear, and Seth Godin's advice would probably be learning just sharing what you wrote at some point, because you're going to have to share and get feedback to become the writer that you want to be, or the writer that you're really meant to be. Because if you're not getting feedback, and again, that's dancing with the fear, because it's terrifying. I mean, even now, like, you're waiting for notes to get back. What did they hate about this? Like, what don't they love? And then you see the little bit of green marker, and you're like, oh, goodness, they love that. But then you're looking at the pile of green notations compared to the red. It's scary. So like even that process, then you got to go back and actually apply, or just determine whether the feedback you got is the right kind of feedback, or if you got to put your foot in the ground and go ahead and stick to your to the words that you originally wrote down, or the ideas that you originally had. Like the entire process is just this whole thing of dancing with the fear, and that's what writing is. I mean, it is for me, and I don't know if your listeners can relate, but I would say just stick with it, because it doesn't go away. You're going to have to learn to how, for most people it doesn't go away, you're going to have to learn how to somehow coexist with that fear. So why not just dance with it? I'm a horrible dancer. I more slow dance. I just go in a little circle right there, but it works for me.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and that's similar, I guess, to, Stephen Pressfield's War of Art, right?
Yeah, resistance.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. No, that's really good, and totally hear you on the, on the fear thing.
Okay,
And
well, good. I at least got one person on my side here. I don't want to like put everyone in that bucket, because I'm sure there's some really brave writers out there, and I ask you to email me to just give me the solution on how to never feel that again.
but maybe that's okay. So this is also from, I think, War of Art with Stephen Pressfield, but uh, there was one part in there where he said, maybe look at that as your true north. That one thing that scares you silly.
Hmm.
You know,
Yeah.
that maybe that's your thing, where your soul is sort of leading you to, or that's, I don't know.
No, I know what you're saying. I
I'm
think
not,
you're exactly right.
yeah,
You're not going. No, you're right. And see, it's probably resistance, and you dancing with the fear right
yeah,
now. That's kind of trying to catch yourself, saying, "Oh, maybe that's not right." You're basically saying, "Jump in the deep end of the pool."
yeah,
Like you think you might. That might be fun. That might be cool. You might be proud of yourself when you get in and you splash and you know you did that. But at some point, you just got to just jump in. If
yeah,
you're really brave, dive in.
yeah. Okay, so just kind of one last question, David. What would you say to first-time writers who feel like they are, somehow immobilized, or maybe fear or maybe resistance of some sort has paralyzed them to write and finish and publish their story because of some kind of thing, resistance, or maybe fear of failure or something? What would you say to them?
Well, my first instinct is to learn how to dance with the fear, but that'd be really anticlimactic. So I'm trying to think of other stuff. I know I've been asked something similar to this on another podcast, and I remember thinking at that point, like, to try and find some type of support system. I remember the first time that when I first started writing, I thought I was gonna. I didn't tell my wife. What I'm getting is, when I first started writing, I didn't tell my wife. Had my laptop, and she didn't know what I was working on, and she just thought, okay, he's just working on his laptop. He's always on that thing. But I was thinking in the back of my head that I was going to go and write this brilliant masterpiece of a story, and then I was probably thinking months at that point, almost 8 years ago, that I'm going to just reveal it to her, and it's just going to shine this light on her, and she's going to be like, oh my goodness, I can't believe you wrote this beautiful thing. But then I remember realizing, yeah, this might take a little bit longer than I thought it was going to take. So I remember sitting her down and telling her, just being terrified to tell her that, hey, I'm writing this story. And I want to write the story. And guess what? I have a really successful career. And I'm not going to leave that. I'm not abandoning that. But I want to tell you, this is something I really want to go after. This is something, I heard this voice. This is what I want to do. And I remember being terrified. And I remember her, fortunately, having a really positive response, saying, yeah, you can do this. I know you're a great writer. I used to edit my emails when we were dating.
Yeah.
So I know that you got it in you as far as that side of it. And I know you're really creative. So I think you got this. Granted, it's been 8 years. I'm also suffering from self-diagnosed perfectionism, but I am right there on the verge. And if I didn't have her at my side, it would have been pretty tough. But you know what? Not everybody may have a spouse that's going to be there for them. So there's obviously writing groups that I've also attended. There's online writing forums. There's tons of Facebook groups that you can jump into where people are supportive. I think that's going to really help you dance with the fear and just kind of keep going down that journey. And not necessarily always getting that feedback that's, hey, you rock, but just knowing that other people are in the same boat as you, or that other people are even rooting for you to reach the end. I think that's what would probably help you.
David, you've given us so much food for thought. I'm gonna have to re-listen to all your amazing tips. And
good, you can listen to me rambling and all that. Hey, buying time.
Yeah.
That's right. It's all in good fun. So I'm glad. I'm thankful. I appreciate you saying that.
Oh yes, and I am looking forward to reading your book.
I've got the first chapter, the first page published at my website. It's all about time travel. It's fun. So yeah, definitely. I'll send the link so you can enjoy it.
Yes.
Or I hope you enjoy it. I'm just assuming you're going to enjoy it, apparently.
No, I'm sure I will. I actually like time travel. That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's great. So, would you share with people that are listening, what new projects or books you're working on, and then how people can find you online?
Yeah, so I just mentioned the novel. It is going to be self-published by the end of the year. I'm a control freak, and I very much want creative control, and that's why I launched my platform to make sure that I can put something out there worthy. Obviously, it's going to get professionally edited and professional covers and all that kind of good stuff, but it's my debut novel. Right now, it's tentatively titled The Temporal Photographer, and it's about a time traveler. I've got what I think is a unique spin on time travel itself. So that's going to be coming out before the end of the year. And then also I have a first group of students going through a new class that I started, and it's called the Fast Draft class. And it's just all about helping novelists focus their ideas, outline their plot, like showing them how to take this proven framework and integrate their own story into it. And then just help them write fast and basically create strong habits and have a bold mindset so they can actually take advantage of their very limited writing time. And I'm going to be re-releasing that. I'm just kind of doing a first trial class to make sure that it has everything that people are going to need and or want. And then I'll do another larger group offering in about 2 to 3 months. And outside of that, that's really what I got going on. And I think you asked how people can find me too. So you mentioned it, firstnamelastname.com, David Villalva. It's actually pronounced Villalva, but it looks like Villalva. So the last name is spelled V as in Victor, Illalva, and I'm sure you're going to link it up. But that's the best way to kind of find out about the fast draft class, find out about my novel that's coming out, and if anything, just get some solid free resources to help you craft your story.
Well, thanks so much, David. You have shared so many golden nuggets with all of us. So that's awesome. And I just really appreciate your time and just sharing with us today.
Of course. Thank you so much.